Hello students. In part 1 of the video on the classical theory of income and employment determination, I will be discussing the development of the classical model. Firstly, let us understand what we mean by the classical theory. By classical theory, we mean the theory which preceded the Keynesian theory. The classical theory is a school of thought that prevailed during the late 18th and early to mid-19th century. So we can say that the classical theory is the economic theory between the principal works of Adam Smith, The Wealth of Nations, 1776, and Alfred Marshall, The Principles of Economics, 1890. But it is sometimes extended to include Pigou because he somewhat modified the superstructure of the classical model. Now let us see the primary assumptions of the classical theory. Firstly, the classicals believed in wage-price flexibility. Wage-price flexibility means that the wages and prices can move freely in the upward and downward direction in response to increased demand or supply so that equilibrium is restored at the full employment level. According to the classicals, if there is a fall in demand, the product prices will decline. This decrease in the demand for output will lead to a decrease in the demand for labor. This will lead to a decline in wages. However, at this lowered wages, the demand for labor will again increase so that the labor market equilibrium is restored. This is the full employment equilibrium. So, the result of the wage-price flexibility assumption is that the economy always tends towards a full employment equilibrium, and the classicals believed that that was the only equilibrium possible. Second assumption is that the classicals believed in the Say's law of markets. As we know, the Say's law of markets states that supply creates its own demand. That is, all that is produced will automatically be demanded. So the implication of Say's law is the impossibility of general overproduction and hence general unemployment. However, one thing that we must keep in mind is that even at full employment level, there can be some amount of frictional or transitional unemployment. What do we mean by this? Frictional or transitional unemployment is the temporary unemployment between jobs or on entry into the labor force while searching for jobs, or unemployment due to lack of knowledge of available job opportunities. Any involuntary unemployment above the full employment level is ruled out in the classical model. Thirdly, the classicals also believed in the policy of laissez-faire or non-interference on the part of the government, which guaranteed normal full employment. The classicals believed that if the price mechanism is allowed to work freely in a capitalist economy without any government interference, then there is a tendency for the economy to move back towards full employment level due to the operation of certain economic forces in the economy. So, they were in favor of the laissez-faire doctrine. Fourthly, the classicals believed in the quantity theory of money, according to which money supply affects only the price level, and the classicals ignored the role of money in affecting variables such as income, output, and employment. They also treated money only as a medium of exchange, and they did not consider the other functions of money, especially the store of value function of money. Fifthly, the classicals believed that savings and investment are both functions of the rate of interest. Saving is a positive function and investment is a negative function of the rate of interest. They said that changes in the interest rate brings about equality between savings and investment. Let us now move on to the development of the classical model. To develop the classical model, we discussed different functional relationships. Number 1, the aggregate production function. Number 2, the labor demand function. Number 3, the labor supply function. And number 4, the money market equilibrium. Let us first start with the aggregate production function. The production function provides a technological relationship between the level of output and the level of variable factor inputs. So the production function may be written as y is a function of k and n, where y is the level of real output, k is the stock of capital, and n is the quantity of labor. However, in the short run, the additions to capital stock are negligible, so that variations in capital stock is also negligible. The state of technology is also assumed to be constant, so in the short run period, the aggregate output is a function of only the variable input, that is, in this case, labor. So we may write the production function as y being a function of n only. So y is equal to yn with y dashed greater than 0 and y double dashed less than 0. Y dashed greater than 0 implies that the function is an increasing one. That is, as the level of employment increases, output also increases. Y double dashed less than 0 implies that the increase in output is at a decreasing rate. This is due to the operation of the law of diminishing returns. Here we have shown the aggregate production function graphically. The aggregate production function is a schedule which is concave to the horizontal axis, reflecting the law of diminishing returns to labor. Let us now consider the labor demand function. In the classical model, firms are considered to be perfect competitors, whose aim is to maximize profits. For profit maximization, a perfectly competitive firm will increase output until the marginal cost of producing 1 unit of output is equal to the marginal revenue received from its sale. So, the profit maximization condition for a perfectly competitive firm may be written as MC equals to MR. Now we know that in a perfectly competitive market, the marginal revenue is nothing but the price. So MR equals to P. Now since labor is the only variable input, the marginal cost equals the marginal cost of labor. And this marginal cost of labor is obtained by dividing the money wage, that is W, by the number of units of output produced by an additional unit of labor, that is MPL, that is the marginal product of labor. So we may write MC equals to W by MPL. So the condition for short-run profit maximization may be written as P equals to MC equals to W upon MPL. If we rearrange this, then we get P equals to W by MPL or W by P equals to MPL. So the condition for profit maximization is that labor is hired up to that point where the real wage rate, that is W by P, is equal to the marginal product of labor, that is MPL. Now we know that the marginal product of labor curve is the firm's demand curve for labor, and it is downward sloping due to the operation of the law of diminishing returns. So from this it follows that the labor demand depends inversely on the real wage rate. So the aggregate labor demand function may be written as ND is a function of W by P such that dNd dW by P is less than 0, showing that it is a negatively sloped function. In the figure below, we have shown the labor demand schedule graphically. We can see that it is a straight line having a negative slope. We now move on to the labor supply function. Classicals assumed that the laborers are free from money illusion. Now what is money illusion? Money illusion means that if the laborers do not take a rise in money wage as desirable, then they are said to be free from money illusion. So, labor supply is considered to be an increasing function of the real wage and not the money wage rate. So, we may write the labor supply function as NS being a function of the real wage, that is W by P, with dNd dW by P greater than 0, showing that it is a increasing function of W by P. In the figure below, we have shown the labor supply schedule, which is a straight line with a positive slope. We now move on to the money market equilibrium. According to the Cambridge version of the quantity theory of money, we may write M is equal to LPY, where M is exogenously given money supply, L is a constant and it is determined by the economic structure, Y is aggregate output, and P is price level. The value of Y, that is aggregate output, is determined in the real part of the model, so the value of Y is known. L is a constant and M is exogenously given. So, P, or the price level, can be determined through the quantity theory equation. So, we may now summarize the classical model in the form of 5 equations which are given below. The first is the aggregate production function. Second equation shows us the labor demand function. The third equation shows us the labor supply function. Fourth equation shows us the labor market equilibrium, and the fifth equation shows us the money market equilibrium.